everybody, and welcome to the Little Fella Sports Podcast. And as you can see today, we've got ESPNCricinfo's very own Raunak Kapoor. So first things first, welcome to the show, Raunak.
Thank you so much, Anirudh. A very happy new year to you, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, Raunak. So obviously, first things first, a pleasure to have you on the show. And how are you doing? And happy New Year, first of all.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot to you as well. All well. Let's hope for better things in 2021. More cricket in 2021. We've all
Hopefully,
seen 2020 as a year of showing us what our lives would be without the sport. So let's hope we never have to witness that again.
makes sense. Yeah. So of course, starting off with cricket. So growing up, how much of a role did cricket play in your life? And were you always this cricket geek, or was it something you took up much later into your life?
Well, let's put it this way. A lot of people get addicted or infatuated with cricket at a very, very young age. Like we're seeing videos these days of 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds batting with near perfect technique and all of that. I didn't quite have that. Maybe if I would have started early, maybe I would have had a longer playing career perhaps. But no, the earliest memory I have of cricket was actually around 9. I was hugely influenced by my grandfather, who used to be this proper cricket fan, who used to set alarms for when India were in Australia for 4:45 a.m. or 4:30 a.m. Watch the pre-match show, then watch the first ball, then take a break at 7, go for his morning tea and coffee, and come back by 7:30, 7:40 when the second session started. And I found that to be a life that was really cool because I was a 9-year-old spending, vacations with my grandfather. And I thought, this is so awesome. Your schedule is around the schedule of cricket. So when they break for lunch, you break for breakfast. When they break for tea, you break for a snack. And I found that to be awesome. And my grandfather was obviously this really important person in the house. Everyone looked up to him. So I was like, yeah, this is a pretty cool life. Yeah. And as it turns out, the first proper test match cricket that I saw was India's tour of Australia in 99, which was obviously a disastrous tour in terms of the result. India were absolutely hammered. And in that year, India also had a pretty poor World Cup, which was the first World Cup that I saw. And then came, the darkest days of Indian cricket, so to speak. So it was a very eventful time, 99, 2000, when I was just about getting connected with the game. I saw, a World Cup that was fun, but terrible from India's point of view. I saw an Australia tour that was unique from a young kid's point of view, but again, terrible in a result. And then you saw Indian cricket with the match fixing scandal and whatnot, but only to see in 2000, 2001, a sort of Ganguly side that just changed the face of Indian cricket. So it had a big impression on me. And then came 2001, where, of course, was that epic series at home against Australia. So a lot of important cricket was very early in my cricket watching time. And once you've seen that in a span of 2 years, you're pretty much hooked onto it. Like you've seen India get hammered in 99, and then to beat that Aussie team in 2001, you're like, wow, this sport is worth watching. So that's when it really started for me. After that, cricket just became a proper addiction, like it would for any teenager in India. And I used to be obsessed with it. I used to write down scores at times. I used to watch all cricket, not just India cricket. But yeah, so at about age 9 and 10 is when the obsession to cricket came about.
Yeah, I think for early years, as you mentioned, it's probably a bit of a roller coaster in terms of the things you probably witnessed in terms of, obviously, as you said, the scandals in the early 2000s to probably the slight highs of 2003, getting to the final and doing really well under
Oh,
Ganguly,
yeah,
winning in
absolutely.
Pakistan for the first time as well in 2004. All of that. So did you play cricket at low junior levels,
I
or
did. I
were you
played. I
just
played. I played for school. I captained for school. There are a few evil people in my school who say that the only reason I captained was because I could talk well, and I talked my way through captaincy as well. Because at school level, it's you don't really. There's no real merit in who becomes captain. The coach just picks one guy sometimes to win the toss. Sometimes it's a different guy in every game. So the coach is the boss, right? In school cricket, like everyone would know in India. And in Mumbai in particular, we play the Harris Shield, the Giles Shield, and or the Guile Shield, however you want to pronounce it. And I played that with a lot of pride for my school. It wasn't the greatest school team that we had. We were an ICSE school, and the schools that tended to do well in the Harris and Guile Shield were the SSC schools. So we were never really a strong team, but I took great pleasure. I took my cricket very seriously back then. I was never great at it. There were at least half a dozen people in the team that could bat or bowl better than me. I kept wicket, as it turned out, because that I thought was my best chance to make the 11, because you're always short of wicket keepers. And I ended up playing, even for college. I was fortunate to play a law college game that had university affiliation. So technically, that would you would call that university level cricket. And that's just about it. I continue playing some amateur tennis ball cricket till date because that's the one thing that I couldn't get enough of. I'm not very good at it, but I can still play, and that passion has never died down.
You actually mentioned about law. So I know
Yeah.
that you worked in All India Radio before you moved to ESPN. So how was the
Yeah.
transition from law to radio and then eventually to ESPN?
It's connected actually, because I've said this story many times on a similar sort of interaction, where I was at Government Law College Mumbai in Churchgate, which is no more than 700-800 meters from the All India Radio Akashvani broadcast bhavan in Mumbai. And the one thing about GLC was, my college was, you didn't have to attend lectures, right? That's the beautiful arrangement they had with their students. So we used to happen to spend a lot of time in South Bombay. And one day, it was after India Bangladesh game, that I heard the commentary on radio, and I thought the commentary was really poor. Like, right, like it's a very proper, ordinary commentary. Hindi commentary has always been good. I thought the English commentary was pretty bad. So I just took a chance, and I walked in with a friend of mine at All India Radio, and I just said, let's try and meet someone. And I met somebody who was in charge of the local sports division in Mumbai, who also happened to be the head of English content. She was a very, very open-minded, level-headed, extremely charming, and just a great lady. And I told her, I said, ma'am, I've been listening to All India Radio commentary for a while. I thought yesterday's commentary was terrible, and I literally just said terrible, and I was like, crap, I shouldn't have been so harsh. And she started laughing. So I saw that as quite a cool moment, because she could have just told me, who are these kids in my office, get out of here. And she just went like, yeah, I know our commentary's been on its way down for a while. And we sat down, we had a cup of tea, and she, through conversation, I told her I always want to do something with connected with cricket, and she said, I'll make you do a few local sports interviews, a little chat shows. You could read the news, since I had a law background. I said, yeah, I'd be very happy to. So that's pretty much how it started. While I was still studying at Government Law College, I did a little bit of work for All India Radio, and a few years later, I went through the process for auditioning to become a national level, international level commentator, and that happened. So till date, I cover international games for radio, for cricket and tennis. And yeah, that's how the transition from there to ESPN was pretty organic in that sense, because in similar ways, I happened to write to Sambit Bal, the editor-in-chief of ESPNCricinfo, of Facebook, as it turns out. And I just told him, I've been doing some work with All India Radio. I'd love to do something for Cricinfo. I'd love to write for Cricinfo, though I want to become an anchor someday. And he, again, just happened to reply saying, come over, let's come to my office. And it just worked from there. So I was very fortunate to meet two open-minded, extremely objective individuals in the right position, that without any real reference or backing, or just gave a total rookie a chance. And I guess there's no looking back since. So that's how it happened. Because when you do what I do, it all happens by accident. You don't go to cricket broadcasting school, right? You don't go to cricket broadcasting college. There's no course to take to end up where Harsha Bhogle has ended, or where a major sports anchor would have ended. So that's what happens. You tend to get into this line by accident, and you're hoping for a little bit of luck.
Fair enough. Of course, and Cricinfo, you've been there, I think, for 7 years now. I think since
That's
2013.
right. This will be the 8th year now, 2021. That's right.
Yeah. So obviously, you've pretty much become the face of digital media, because till 2013, Cricinfo was more paper form. Like, you obviously have the internet, you read stuff on Cricinfo, but the video side of it and the digital side of it wasn't present till you probably came about. And nowadays, it's probably one of the major shows you guys do, right? So how's the journey been in terms of working with, obviously, the likes of Michael Holding, Rahul Dravid, Chappell, all these absolute legends of the game? And in general, how's your journey been in terms of from this point to where you are right now?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good point to make. So when I started with Cricinfo in 2013, the first event I did for them was called A Day with Dravid. It was in March 2013, and it was essentially to commemorate 20 years of Cricinfo. It was the first ever live video that Cricinfo had done. And back then, this is we're recording this on StreamYard. There is YouTube Live, there is Facebook Live, there are Insta Lives. All of that is prevalent today, but back then there wasn't much, and we were using Google Hangouts, which were a thing at that time. And it was still people figuring out how live streaming would sit on a site which, like you rightly point out, was text heavy, text driven. And it was in that sense a technical disaster because the live event did not go up on the site as planned. But they're all learnings in that, and as it turns out, over time we've realized we've ironed those things out. But yeah, as far as the people that I've worked with goes, I've been very, very lucky. I started working with Rahul Dravid. You wouldn't mind taking that, right, as your first live gig if Rahul Dravid is going to be next to you. So that in itself was just a moment I'll never forget. And you call them legends, and you rightly do, because they were legends when they played the game. But I think what makes them even more legendary is just how awesome they are, in spite of their stature in the game. The names you mentioned, Mikey, Holding, Ian Chappell, humble people, simple people, honest to themselves. In fact, with no disrespect to today's bunch of commentators, barring maybe one or two, you just don't get that quality anymore. Everyone's so afraid of what they say. They're towing the line. They're rarely adding to the viewer's experience in the ways that the likes of Holding and Chappell and Laurie and Benno and Gower and Cozier and so many others did. When I was growing up. And I don't mean to sound like someone who's 100 years old, but I'm literally, when in my growing years, all these names, Tony Gregg and the likes, were the ones that you relied on to help you better understand the game. And my education of cricket is a lot to do with what I heard from Ian Chappell or Sunil Gavaskar at that time, or or the names that I mentioned say. So yeah, the experience working with them has been outstanding. The opportunity to have to know them beyond the studios is just unbelievable. And as far as how things go till today, I mean, now we're in a different world, right? Video is so easy to do. Everyone sitting at home can do it. You're, hosting this from the comforts of your home. I'm interacting with you from the comforts of my home. I'm in no studio. This is set up at my house in post-COVID times. So life has become so much easier. Otherwise, what you and me are doing required a lot more people to execute. So times are easier and times have changed, but it's been terrific. That's all I can say.
Okay, talking about Rahul Dravid in specific,
Yeah.
I know that you managed to convince him to do an Instagram live a few months back when
Did you watch that? Did you watch that?
Yeah, I
Okay.
watched that. So, is there one moment off screen which probably you were just spellbound working with Rahul Dravid, where you felt, wow, this man's doing this?
Okay, that's a pretty good question. Again, I'm quite lucky to have actually spent quite a few moments with Rahul. So like there are little things, right? I'll give you a couple of anecdotes. We were working on the India tour of England in 2014, and Rahul was doing the fourth test with us, and I think that was a test that had a lot of rain interruptions. So we were just getting tired of doing pointless shows because there was no real cricket, and we were also getting a bit tired of the coffee in the office. And it was, so there was a barista right opposite the ESPN Bangalore office. So Rahul said, "I'm tired of this coffee. Can we get a barista? Can we get a cappuccino, good cappuccino from somewhere?" I said, "There's a barista samne. I can have someone get it for you, or I'll go get it for you." He said, "No, I want to get out of the office." So I said, "Okay." I said, "Come." So we walked down, nonchalant, and this is Bangalore, right? Rahul Dravid, if he's recognized in Bangalore, if he's recognized anywhere in India, he'll be hounded. But in Bangalore, he is Sachin Tendulkar, Rajinikanth in Chennai equivalent, superstardom, or Dhoni in Ranchi stroke Chennai. So that's sort of, but he just walked nonchalantly, and we managed to get a cup of coffee. And I said, "Come, should we take it back?" He said, "No, let's sit here. I just want to sit for a little while." So there was a screen in the barista which had the live game on, as in the interruption. So he said, "We'll know now when the cricket resumes. We'll go back then." So we're just sitting, and there were a couple of guys that must have come to the barista after their day's work. And you think this is their daily routine. They keep coming for a coffee at the end. And suddenly they turn and they just look at him. And they just look at him, say, "Excuse me." He says, "Yes, are you Rahul Dravid?" So he goes, "Yeah." He says, "Can I get a picture?" He's like, "Yeah, sure." So there was, in that moment itself, it was also normally done. That guy's even asking, "Are you Rahul Dravid?" Because I guess he just couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe Rahul Dravid is sitting at the barista that he must be frequenting every day. And I can't think of any other superstar that would have even said, "I'll go and get the coffee myself. I need a break I'm stuck in the office." It would have been one of the many people in your entourage going and getting him. So that is again telling you the moment of simplicity. It was just, "Yeah, I'll go get a coffee myself. I'm tired." It's what you and me would say, right? If we're stuck in a room or an office and we're like, "Let's go out, get a coffee. It's nice weather." So that stands out. There are times when we wanted to schedule recordings, and Rahul has said, no, I need to pick up the kid from school. Like, he took up the role of a full-time dad just after his retirement. So that always was prioritized. And I mean, there are so many simple, subtle moments that make it about make it about the man that he is. Yeah. So even that Insta live that you mentioned, I asked him for 10 minutes of his time, and he is a dinosaur on technology, right? He doesn't operate, he doesn't even have WhatsApp. So the fact that we had all those challenges in that Insta live, like you mentioned, where I had to improvise with him on Skype on the upper half of my window, right, on my window rather, and his audio coming through the lower half on his window. It took 39 minutes in total, and maybe about 20 minutes of conversation, because it took us about 19-20 minutes just to figure this out. But he was such a gentleman. He wasn't like, oh, Ronak, sorry, it's not happening, see you tomorrow. Or I told you, asked for 10 minutes, it's taken you half an hour to just figure this shit out. So I just think those are the kind of things that make him so much more awesome. Like, he's a legend like none other, because it's these things don't unfaze him. He understands, yeah, okay, there was a problem, I couldn't do much about it, you couldn't do much about it, so it's cool. And that's just how good he is. Yeah. So like I said, there's a lot of times where you can think of Rahul being terrific, and just simple things that you don't expect people of his stature to do, and he just does it. So he makes you feel like you're with someone normal or one of your own. So that's his best quality, I think.
Yeah, I think simplicity probably describes Rahul Dravid
Yeah.
best. I mean, right from his batting to, as you said, whatever he's doing right these
Yeah.
days. So makes sense. Another interesting person I really want to talk about is Sanjay Manjrekar. Obviously, you worked with him
Yes, of course.
a lot of times, I know, for the past few years. And personally, in my opinion, I enjoy his analysis a lot, because I feel he provides something others don't, in terms of being very straightforward. And as you said, not towing the line. He doesn't really bother about that. And because of that, he obviously gets a lot of flack from fans and even cricketers, as we see. How
Yeah.
do you view that public perception about him, and do you think it's unfair? Because I personally think it's incredibly unfair on him. And despite that, he's actually continuing to do what he does always, and doing it at a very,
Yeah.
very good level.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. I'm glad you've asked me. I'm not surprised, because I get a lot of Sanjay questions, and it's known to most people that follow me or follow my work. And I'll say it for those that don't, that I'm a very good friend of Sanjay. So I'm putting a disclaimer bias right there at the end. But I'll speak objectively, because Sanjay has been good friends with me for many reasons. One of them also being that I tend to tell him off when I think he may have got it wrong, and that I think is pretty much the basis of what he's been through. I totally agree with you when I think that what he is at the receiving end of is unfair, because his biggest crime, even if I am to let go of the analysis bit, okay, maybe he is more opinionated than others, and yes, that is a crime in these days. But his biggest crime is, at worst, getting a cricketing observation wrong. That is not a big deal, right? It's okay to say that I don't think this player is good enough, or I don't think this captain led well, or I don't think this is how whatever it should be. It's a cricketing observation. At worst, he's got it wrong in the eyes of you, in your opinion. There's still something to say that maybe he likes Ravindra Jadeja the player, or he doesn't like Ravindra Jadeja the player, but I like him. There are all sorts of people. You look at every cricketer down the year, and there would have been those that said, yeah, he walks into the team, and there have been those that said, no, there are better players than him. Barring the few all-time greats that you can count on one hand. So I think, yeah, he's absolutely at the receiving end of unfair abuse for certain. And where I would I guess observe why that happens is, in this day and age, not just in cricket, but in most fields, there are so many people that are conscious about what they say, and they toe the line, that anyone who is opinionated, uh, right or wrong, I mean, there's no right or wrong in personal opinions, but someone who does tend to ruffle feathers, someone who does tend to speak out, will stand out. And often, a lot of people will take offense on behalf of other people and make things messy, right? So if he has said, oh, I don't think Virat Kohli led well today, or oh, I think Ravindra Jadeja is a bits and pieces player and doesn't walk into my ODI 11, maybe it's not the cricketers themselves that first take offense. It's a lot of people on behalf of them that do, oh, how can you say this, or how much have you played, oh, and all sorts of things which are completely unwarranted, in my opinion. If you go back to the eras before this bunch of cricket. Let's talk about the likes of Rahul and Saurav. All of them have been under criticism. Dravid's been under criticism for his place in the one-day team. He's been under criticism for his place in the test team towards the end. Ganguly, we all know the sort of criticism he went through. There were times where Tendulkar was heavily criticized for the way he batted, including approaching his 100 hundreds, including the slowness with which he used to play when he got into the 90s. We all remember what happened between him and in Pakistan. They're all at the receiving end of criticism. It's okay. People didn't go crazy if you went after Tendulkar or Dravid or Lakshman, who again was criticized perhaps for standards of fitness or whatever. It wasn't like it was today. So it's okay. Better players than this have been criticized in the past. It doesn't matter. It doesn't make them lesser players. The problem right now is people take offense on behalf of those cricketers, which in some way does influence those cricketers. So suddenly Ravindra Jadeja is seeing all these people having a go at Sanjay on his behalf and has clearly felt like, oh my God, right, let me shut him up as well. I think that was an error of judgment because it's an extremely poor taste to tell somebody else that look at how much you have played and therefore you shouldn't be commenting on me. I think that's absolutely unwarranted, because if that was the case, then only Tendulkar, Lara, Shane Warne, and Muralidharan should be able to comment on the game. Because unless you've got 800 wickets or 10,000, 20,000 runs, you shouldn't comment on the game, which is absolute nonsense, right? Everyone is entitled to an opinion on the game. We are all invested in cricket. We all, Indian cricket and world cricket runs because of people like you and me. We are equal participants and stakeholders of it, and we have every right to an opinion. As long as it's, qualified, as long as it's not personally biased, I think it's fine. So that's where I think he's at the receiving end of unfortunate, let's just call it, trolling or abuse from social media. And like I said, I don't agree with everything Sanjay says. Let me put that out. I'm not only doing an advertisement for a friend of mine, but I'll go back to what I started with. At his worst crime is getting a cricket observation wrong. I like Ravindra Jadeja. I've liked him for a while. I think he's good enough to bat at 5 and 6 in every format. India have never played him in every format. I think his bowling shouldn't be looked at as a 10-over specialist bowler in ODI cricket. That's a concern for me. Or as a 4-over bowler in T20 cricket. That is also a concern. Maybe he'll give you 10 and 4 overs on a good day. But that's my opinion on him. That doesn't go to say that, Sanjay isn't entitled in saying that, yeah, he's a bits and pieces cricketer because he's not sure about how much, you're not sure about how much he's going to contribute with the bat, and you're not sure about whether he's going to give you 10 overs. So bits and pieces is not derogatory. It's been used for eons. Russell Arnold has used it. Kumar Sangakkara has used it to describe Jeevan Mendes. N number of cricketers have used it to describe other all-round cricketers. So it's okay. It was no big deal. Blown out of proportion because Jadeja had a go. And like I said, I'm repeating myself, but Sanjay, you may disagree with him, but he's honest to himself at most times, and he gives you an opinion which few others do. I'll just end by saying, if you look at the Indian commentators available today, I would certainly say Harsha is the best commentator India has. And I think I'd put Sanjay at second, because I don't know who I would put. Ravi doesn't comment it anymore. And even just before he became coach, I don't think he was the same commentator he was 10, 15 years back. I have a lot of respect for Mr. Gavaskar, but I can listen to him in Test cricket. I'm not sure he gets the T20 game as well as others. And then you're left with who? I mean, the rest of the cricketers, and many of them are my friends and many of them I've worked with professionally, but I don't think they're as good as Sanjay. So he is among the top 2 or 3 cricket voices in India. And that's a matter of fact.
Yeah, I think you can have opinion and you should be allowed to have an opinion, but I think there should be some level of respect also for another person's opinion.
Absolutely.
And I think
tolerance. It's tolerance, right? It's okay to have someone who doesn't have the same opinion as you. It's not important for everyone to say the same thing every time. Like if I say today Virat Kohli did not lead well today, it's okay. It does not make Virat Kohli a lesser player. Virat Kohli is the best white ball batsman India have ever had. He may very well become the best all-format batsman India have ever had, right? But if I say he had a bad game for Bangalore, his captaincy didn't go well, or he made a few errors today and therefore, that cost India, that doesn't make him any lesser. Greater mortals than him have made mistakes. It's okay. It's an observation of the game. You don't need to go crazy about it. And I think that's the problem in today's day and age, because a lot of these cricketers, without me, I'm just speculating here, but I think they're heavily influenced by how social media treats them. So they're so used to the praise and they're in a little bubble that any form of criticism pierces, and that's what triggers a reaction.
Fair enough. Talking about T20 cricket in specific, do you honestly believe, from an Indian perspective, we don't really look at T20 as separate format, more look at T20 as a shortened version of one-day cricket, and that's probably shown in terms of team selection and the way we play T20 cricket internationally. Of course, we have the IPL and all that, but still T20 cricket internationally.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think India have been guilty of some pretty ordinary selection calls, especially for T20 cricket. And I think this next T20 World Cup, which is now, of course, scheduled to be in India, is going to be a great reflection of understanding whether India has fixed that or not. If you look back at that 2016 World Cup semi-final, the one that India lost against the West Indies, it pretty much summarized the problem India have. Virat Kohli scored, I think, what was a 40 ball 70 or something like that, which is a really good innings. Around him, there were four guys. There was Rohit Sharma, there was Shikhar Dhawan. I think there was KL Rahul in there. I can't remember the exact top five. Suresh Raina was there. Yuvraj Singh was there. Yeah. So you've had 4 or 5 guys there that essentially played one way, and you come to 4 years later and you ask yourself, has Indian cricket rectified that issue in T20 cricket? Yeah, so I think there's a problem with Indian cricket selection in general, and that is not identifying players that are suited for specific roles for T20 cricket. And I do hope they identify that sooner rather than later, because in my view, there is no doubt in my mind that a player of Rishabh Pant's abilities should play in the T20 side. That India have to make a call that you cannot have Shikhar Dhawan, Rohit Sharma, KL Rahul, and Virat Kohli all batting in the same team. It is just not possible. And I would throw Shreyas Iyer into that as well, who perhaps has a little more versatility, but I think is still more in that mold. So they need to take these calls rather quickly and have a team that covers all bases for T20 cricket, which certainly India has the potential to with the amount of top players that there are. So it's a concern, and I think it's not as much treatment of T20 cricket as ODI cricket. I think it's just poor selection, and that for that the team management and the selectors have to take equal responsibility. Selectors keep changing in Indian cricket, so it's important now that whoever is taking the calls for the T20 World Cup understands the nuances of the T20 game and picks a squad that covers these bases, even if it means you need to lose out on one big name player, because you have enough people doing that job that are better than that guy.
Yeah, I think especially when you talk about Rishabh Pant, I completely agree with what you said. I think there's no doubt that he should be in India's T20 format. I mean, he's got as good numbers as AB de Villiers in the last 3 years in the IPL.
Absolutely.
I think it's ridiculous that he's not part of the T20 setup.
Yeah, I mean, like there are some players, Ani, that unfortunately the kind of times we live in, depending on how they enter the public eye.
Perception.
Perception can go either really for them or really hard against them. And when Pant came in, he essentially came in as the guy who was potentially going to oust Dhoni from the team, right? So there was obviously a huge amount of anti-Dhoni, of pro-Dhoni. You could say there was some Dhoni sycophancy that was going against Pant, where people wanted him to do poorly, right? I think that genuinely did. People were really happy that, oh, you think this is the guy now that'll replace Dhoni. You guys were criticizing Dhoni, and look at who's come in. So I thought that was unfair. I don't think he got a good deal, even in terms of having a decent run in the team as a keeper batsman. He played a lot of cricket with Dhoni and as a fielder. I think when you're playing a specialist keeper, you have to play him as a keeper batsman. I just think that's something that you want to do. You want to make him play in the position that he's used to playing in. And more so jostled up and down the order in both ODI and T20 cricket. Again, no clarity in whether he is the test number one or not, in spite of such a good start to his test career. So I just think, and the kind of player that he is, he will always attract some criticism. So it's unfortunate that Indian cricket hasn't treated a talent like Rishabh Pant so well, but I think he is way more talented than most other contemporaries his age. And I think he certainly has the versatility in his game that few other players do. He surely has to be a part of an Indian T20 side.
I completely agree. I mean, that's exactly my opinion as well. I think it's ridiculous that he's not part of whatever. Yeah. He should be part of all 3 formats. I can't believe that he's not. So let's see how it goes.
I think the thing with the one-day game is the gears of the one-day game are actually more challenging for T20 specialists to get. I think he's again got the ability, certainly, but you have seen him not quite sure of when to build an innings and when to take off when he comes in, say, 22nd, 23rd over. What sort of game does he play then? So I think those gears will take some time. And that is perhaps his biggest question. That having been said, I don't think he's got a longish, consistent run in the ODI side either. So it would be great if whoever is managing players like Pant in the Indian team find a way to get the best out of him for all three formats, because he certainly has the ability to be as successful in all three formats.
Slightly controversial, but do you believe India should go to a to a multi-format, multi-captain scenario where you have someone else captain the one day and T20s and someone else captain the test side? You know where I'm getting to.
Yeah, absolutely. And why is it a question that we need to tiptoe around? It's perfect. It's a perfectly valid question. England are the World Cup champions, and they have different captains in formats. Australia have been one of the best teams in the world. Even today are, whatever you may think of the Australian team, they are one of the top teams of the world. They've got multi-format captains. The West Indies, who are defending T20 World Cup champions, have multi-format captains. So who is to say that it is not a successful way to lead? Of course it is. If you happen to have the same guy who's good enough in all three formats, which rarely do you find a player these days with three formats, then great. And Virat Kohli certainly walks into every Indian 11, T20, ODI or Test. So there is no doubt over his place in the team. Will a different captain bring about a different result? That is something that I don't know, because we haven't ever seen it. Is there merit in replacing Kohli as captain in any of the formats? The only one that I would think of is T20, for the simple reason that I think India get a lot wrong on the selection table in T20 cricket. And for that, you have to, in some ways, hold the captain accountable, because, like I said, selectors and coaches keep changing. Better batsmen than Kohli, if you consider Tendulkar, and I think you must, have taken the captaincy, not been successful at it, and therefore happily just batted and been absolutely brilliant for teams under different captains. Tendulkar himself must have played under a good 3 or 4 captains, and himself opines of how Dhoni was the best that he played under. So who is to say that Kohli will not be a player of the tournament when India win a World Cup, even if Rohit Sharma or somebody else, or KL Rahul, will be captain? So I think we make too much of a big deal out of this because of brand Kohli. But I don't see it being an issue at all if the decision is made. I don't think India need to replace him in Test captaincy or in ODI captaincy, because I think his record is very good. And I think as far as T20 cricket goes, what goes for Rohit Sharma is his success with the Mumbai Indians. I would be tempted to try it out. I wouldn't make any change now, because we're less than a year away from the T20 World Cup. So if a change had to be made, it should have been made a long time back. But I do believe if India do not win this T20 World Cup at home, significant advantage, if they at least don't make the final, although my expectations of Indian cricket are that they should be winning ICC events, the kind of quality that there is now, there perhaps never has been, in terms of fast bowlers, in terms of all-rounders, in terms of versatility and batsmen. I just think this should be a team that should be dominating world cricket the way Ricky Ponting's Australia or Steve Waugh Australia did. Yeah, absolutely. And Test cricket may be hard, but I still think this team's good enough to do it. So the fact that they don't, somewhere someone has to be held accountable. And this would be, I think, after the Champions Trophy and the 2019 World Cup, this would be what Kohli's third tournament as captain, or have I missed out on something? 17, 19, 20. So this would be his third tournament. So I would keep a close eye to see, whether this team has, if they don't go on to win a tournament, whether they've not won it as a result of poor selection calls, poor tactical calls, or whether they've just been beaten by a good team, because that can happen as well. And if that is the case, then then I think we should take a call, or Indian cricket should take a call on its captaincy then. But there is nothing to suggest that split captains are detrimental to a team's success. Absolutely nothing to suggest that. So I'm very open to it, but only if there is a candidate better than Kohli to lead in any of the formats.
Yeah, I completely agree in terms of you give Virat obviously another tournament. I think he deserves that. But beyond that, you have to look at whether things go well or not. And also the most important thing you mentioned is, I think India's style of T20 won't change too much, but I think selection is what makes the difference in T20 cricket.
Absolutely.
In Test, you can obviously do a lot more beyond selection, but I think T20, if you pick the right team, you should be fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talking about the IPL, one specific question I really wanted to ask you about. In 2018, obviously a very, very infamous prediction of yours. I actually concurred with your prediction also. Chennai Super Kings not really doing as well as you expected. Yeah. So, do you feel vindicated after what happened last year?
Oh, that's mean. Okay. Because the Chennai guys actually, I don't feel bad for the Chennai guys, but I do sympathize with them because they are the most passionate followers of an IPL side, maybe close along with Bangalore. And I seem to have pissed both sets of fans off for no reason other than just observing whatever, speaking my mind on what I observe. So let me put it this way: when Chennai came back in 2018 to when Chennai have actually had their worst season, which is 2020, very little has changed in those teams. So I am not the least bit surprised that they did poorly. And I was extremely surprised when they did as well as they did, and not just win in 2018, but nearly win in 2019. They came within one ball of actually winning it. And had Shane Watson not been run out in that 2019 final, they would have probably won that as well. So this was extraordinary. And it was an education for me, because I have nothing for or against any team. I have no interest in the Mumbai Indians, even though I hail from Mumbai. And that's another nonsense narrative that is run on Twitter and whatnot, that because you're from Mumbai, you care about Mumbai, which is absolute rubbish. So my only thing is, I like teams that have that play. I like teams that go about their job well, that pick good teams. Strong teams should win, right? Sport is about the underdog and all that. I get it, but strong teams should win. Otherwise, if a poor team won tournaments, that wouldn't make for a great spectacle. Everyone remembers Kenya's journey in the 2003 World Cup, but that didn't make for a fun semi-final to watch, right? It didn't make for an exciting Final Four. You could say the same about, when Leicester won the Premier League. It was terrific. It was the greatest underdog story of my generation in sport. But would you always want a team like that winning? No, because I think it's important that people that get good players in a team, that build a good team around them, that have success. That's how sport ought to work. So I love the Sunrisers Hyderabad because I think they really go about their business in a smart, cricket savvy way. What I didn't give to the CSK guys was that there is a variable that goes beyond all of this on paper analysis and what I see, and that is Dhoni the captain. Dhoni the captain gets guys to perform 10, 20, 30, 50, 70% better than what I think they perform anywhere else. And there are n number of players that show that. You look at the amount of players that have been, absolutely average or below average for other teams, and suddenly they come to CSK and they just find their mojo, right? Whether that's Shane Watson himself at this late stage of his career, whether it's the likes of Ambati Raidu, who've played at other franchises and had these killer seasons, Suresh Raina, who's not been able to have a decent season outside of CSK in the 2 years that he played for Gujarat. And, all sorts of stories like that. So Dhoni is extraordinary. And that is something I discounted because I thought he was coming at the back of two rather average seasons with Rising Pune Supergiant. He was replaced as captain. He wasn't quite, the same player as I thought he was, but he was certainly a good enough player in the IPL, as he proved. So that was my error in judgment, that I didn't account for the Dhoni factor. But I would stick, if I had to go back, I'd make the exact same prediction. That team wasn't good enough to win. And they, I think, also reaped the rewards of teams around them just messing it up. Again, selection calls. Teams take so long to figure out what their best 11 is. Many teams take 6 or 7 games in an IPL season to actually find out their best 11. By which time, CSK have already nicked 3 or 4 wins out of the first 5 and need to literally win just 3 more to make the playoffs. Once they've made the playoffs, all their experience comes in, and there is some amount of intimidation that other franchises would have towards CSK. So I think those factors, Dhoni is masterful at just, amplifying. And therefore, I stood, humiliatingly corrected, but I have no regrets on that call. When they did poorly in 2020, it was because, there was just, it couldn't have happened anymore. We know that Dhoni, one thing Dhoni is not open to change as much, right? He tended to go with what he knew and backed those players. And that turned to be a great thing in certain times, but this was pushing it. Everyone was coming off a difficult time. The fitness issues were amplified. There were bigger grounds in the UAE. The fact that they didn't get to play at the Chepauk, for which they essentially picked this kind of team with lots of spinners, with batsmen who could play, a 130, 135 strike rate game and maybe set and chase scores of 160. The minute the game went beyond 160, you could see that it was getting tough for Chennai Super Kings. So again, like I said, it was I made a judgment call in 2018, and it didn't look good with how the season panned out. But I stick by it, and I have no doubt that next year we will see wholesale changes for the Super Kings, because that is what they've been brilliant at. They've always had the best players of the league. That's why they won 3 titles in their first few years, or rather made 3 finals in their first few years, won 2 titles. But if they actually this when they won in 2018 and when they made the final 2019, they did not have the best team in the tournament. When they won in the first few years of the IPL, they had the best team in the tournament. So simple as that. That's where I stand on this. Like Akash Chopra once told me, you don't need to have the best team in the tournament to win the IPL. So that's what happened with CSK.
I completely agree in terms of CSK absolutely defying logic in the first couple of years. Even I couldn't believe in terms of how well they did. And I'd say sanity was restored in 2020. They did perform the way you expected them to perform in 2018, at least from my perspective. So
Sure.
I guess it is what it is. You spoke a little bit about the Premier League. I know that you're an Arsenal fan also. So last couple of questions before we wrap it up. So
Sure.
being an Arsenal fan, how do you see the season which has gone so far, and what are your expectations heading into the next few months towards the end of the season?
I'm so glad you're asking me this question today, with the time of recording being, for the benefit of our viewers, the 3rd of January 2021, just less than 24 hours after Arsenal have put together a very impressive 4-0 win at West Bromwich Albion, at the back of 2 wins against Brighton away and Chelsea at home. So those 3 wins just changed the mood of the Arsenal fans, because it's been a tough season. I'll be honest, I'm not saying this now, but I always believed that the club has got it right with Arteta, for the simple reason that he just said the right things. He seemed to make some good calls. He's made some questionable calls in recent weeks, but I think Arsenal's poor performances this season have little to do with the manager and more to do with the players. And I would not hold these results against Mikel Arteta, because he's inherited this team. I told myself I'm going to give him at least 5 transfer windows to see how things go, and in each of these early transfer windows, just 2 so far, I have seen him, bring significant changes. So the kind of players that are coming in, I like the sign of that. I'd like to see it for another year or 2. And I think they've got the right man. And Arsenal are a club that will be patient with him. I know they weren't patient with the previous manager, but I think that was an appointment that went wrong. Here is a guy that represents in many ways what the kind of influence that Arsene Wenger had on the club. And it looks like he has the confidence of the owners, which is something that's very important at any football club. So I would back Mikel Arteta. I would ask Arsenal fans to be patient. The fact that this man has won the FA Cup already is no small feat. And more than anything, I like the players that he is able to attract to the club, in spite of its not so strong position in Europe in these recent years. So that for me is a good sign.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a United fan, just for information, and I enjoyed Arsenal not
Enjoy
being
it.
too well recently.
Enjoy it.
But,
I mean, look, that's a great story as well, right? Being a United fan, no one's had more ups and downs than Ole Gunnar Solskjaer in his recent times.
Yeah.
Every time he's done poorly, United fans want him out. Every time he nails some incredible result in the Champions League or somewhere else, all of a sudden everyone's singing ole, ole, ole. And here you all stand now with a very realistic chance of competing with Liverpool for the title. So, and this is again a manager who's very new in his managerial career. We shouldn't forget that. So that's the kind of patience that I think we're generally running out of, which people in the Fergie and Wenger years didn't have. I mean, I would love to know what would have happened if Twitter was around in the first few years of Sir Alex Ferguson, and he faced enough, downtimes in his early years. He came close to a sacking. Wenger, when he was appointed, people were wondering who the hell is this guy? Where's he come from? So that's the kind of thing I'd like to see. That if they didn't have social media back then, their clubs backed them, their fans were patient, and look at the years that followed for their respective clubs. So I would love to see something similar, maybe not as much for Ole, but certainly for Arteta.
Completely. So we'll wrap it up with a quick fire, rapid fire right now.
Sure.
So, favorite current batsman and bowler?
Okay, favorite current batsman, Joss Butler. Favorite current bowler, I shouldn't take so long. Bumrah.
Best cricket game you've covered live?
2019 World Cup final.
Not hard. Favorite moment as a cricket fan?
Favorite moment as a cricket fan, India 2011 World Cup. I was at the Wankhede Stadium, so nothing beats that.
Who wins the Test Championship this year? Oh
my God. Firstly, whoever figures out whether they've made it in the top 2, because it's so bloody complicated right now. We have no idea who's actually going to play the final. I'm going to stick my neck out and say India. I think they'll actually get the result against England at home. They will pip New Zealand, and I think they'll be okay in England. So I'm going to say India.
Who wins the World T20 this year?
I made a bold prediction on a interaction just recently, saying my one bold prediction of 2021 is that a team that has never won the T20 World Cup will win it this year. So that rules out India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, the West Indies, and England. So therefore, that leaves you with
Australia.
New Zealand, South Africa, Australia, and who knows, maybe Bangladesh or Afghanistan. So I'm going to stick to that. I'm going to say a team that's never won the T20 World Cup will win it this year.
Which young player are you most excited to see in the next couple of years?
Shubman Gill.
I think it's a very, very common answer amongst a lot of
Oh, I've
cricket
been saying it. I've been saying it before he played that innings in Melbourne. But yes,
Oh yeah,
Shubman Gill.
I agree.
Yeah.
Out of Kohli, Smith, Williamson, and Joe Root, who do you enjoy watching the most?
Enjoy watching the most as a batsman, Kohli. Enjoy watching as the all-round package on the field as well, Kane Williamson. I don't like watching Steve Smith. He makes batting look very hard. And Joe Root is not in the same league as the three you mentioned, in my humble opinion.
And the same applies to the bowlers: Bumrah, Archer, Khagiso Rabada, and Pat Cummins.
Excellent bunch, certainly closer in quality than the others. Cummins is still not an all-format bowler like the other three. They are all-format bowlers. I'm going to say Bumrah is still just so much more fun to watch because he's just so cool about the wickets that he gets. And Archer and Rabada they've got so much swag. All three of them have so much swag between them. But I mean, Indian cricket fans know we don't get Indian fast bowlers that do this. We do see South African fast bowlers, English fast bowlers, West Indian fast bowlers because Archer has heritage in the Caribbean. We've seen those sorts of bowlers, but we've never seen Indian. So, Bumrah for me, easy.
And Arteta, Mourinho, Lampard, or Ole Gunnar Solskjaer? I know your answer, but still.
Actually, I'm very impressed with what Frank Lampard's managed to achieve in what was again Chelsea's most difficult time, after the transfer bans that they had, after the players that they lost Hazard, which was half their team, at least what I saw. They seem to have a really good bunch of players. So it's not easy for players. I mean, Gerrard seems to be struggling. If I remember reading correctly, Patrick Vieira was sacked recently from where he was coaching. So great players tend to find it hard transitioning into management. So Lampard is of course a great player. And therefore, I'm very impressed that he's managed to, keep things in order at Chelsea and genuinely continue them as, a top four club because, you and me know as United and Arsenal fans that it's so easy to just slip out of that after legacies of management that we've had. So I'll actually say Lampard for this one.
Fair enough. And final question, would you rather see Arsenal win the league or India win the World Cup?
Oh my God. I have seen India win the World Cup. I've also seen Arsenal win the league, but I was very young at that time. I think if I had to pick between the two, the thing is, and I'm sorry I'm making this a bit of a bummer, but when you work in cricket as much, you become a little less attached to the team. And therefore, I'm a little less attached to this Indian team than I was to the teams that I grew up watching, Ganguly's team, Dhoni's team. Kohli's team is not something it's more like work for me, and therefore it doesn't matter as much to me when they win or lose, right? So, and that would be the same no matter who is captain. So I'm still very, very passionate about Arsenal. So I would say, at the risk of some abuse, that I would rather see Arsenal win the league than India win the World Cup because I've already seen, India win the World Cup and that was brilliant. So I'm going to say Arsenal.
Fair enough. Thanks a lot, Ronak. Thanks a lot for your time. I mean, it was an absolute pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you. My pleasure.
I had a great time listening to all the stuff you had to say, and thanks a lot to taking time and joining us on today's show. And guys, please do like, share, subscribe to our podcast, and please stay tuned. We've got a lot of content lined up. And thanks once again, Ronak, for joining us today.
Thank you, Anirudh. Thanks so much for having me. Bye. Take care.